Hi, Kathy.
Hi. Oh, great to see you.
You've got like 60 seconds to say hello, and then it goes into everyone mute.
You know what? This is one of the beauties, one of the benefits and beauties of this is I get to see a lot of the chiefs and friends and commerce, chambers of commerce that I would not normally get to see if you hadn't organized this, Elaine.
There you go. Happy to do it. Well,
good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, I should say.
There he is, right on time, David. Hi, David.
How are you, ma'am?
Oh, hi, David. Great. Great.
Mr. Pyatt, I think we're ready to go.
It is 12:01. We're ready. We're ready.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Thursday afternoon Zoom meeting, if you will, regarding our multiple police chiefs and our special guest, our state attorney, Katherine Rundle. I am Gary Pyatt, chairman of the board, proud chairman of the board of the Aventura Marketing Council and Chamber of Commerce, and I am delighted to welcome you to our second annual conversation with law enforcement. We have an esteemed, as I said, director, moderator today, our state attorney, Katherine Fernandez Rundle, in conversation with many, many law enforcement agencies and chiefs who I will be reading off in just a minute. As Michael said, and I will reiterate now, please mute yourself throughout the program. If you're not, as an individual speaking, please mute yourself in respect of everybody else. Also, we have an extremely full program today. Please just submit any questions to the chat room, and after the meeting, your questions will be forwarded to the appropriate law enforcement professional if they cannot be answered today. What I'd like to do now is just introduce everybody that we have now. We have our Aventura Chief, Chief Brian Pegues, Bay Harbor Islands Chief Raul Diaz, Coral Gables Chief Edward Wodak, El Portal Chief David Magnuson, Key Biscayne Chief Charles Press, Miami Beach Chief Rick Clements, Miami-Dade Corrections Chief Daniel Jr., Miami-Dade County Public Schools Chief Edwin Lopez, Miami Gardens Chief Delma Noprat, North Miami Chief Chief Richard Rand, Surfside Chief Julio Yarrow, University of Miami Chief David Rivero, and yes, there are still more. FIU Major Benjamin Guerrero, Special Victims Bureau, Miami-Dade Major Brian Rathke, Special Victims Unit, President of the Miami-Dade County Association of Police Chiefs, David Della Espria. Also logged in and listening today are Golden Beach Police Chief Rudy Herbello, Sunny Isles Beach Chief Dwight Schneider, and Indian Creek Village Police Chief Clark Mayer. Also, a special shout out to our Community Police Relations Foundation. Understand, please, that this exists only to strengthen communities through law enforcement. We would like to please extend an appreciation for them and all that they do. We also, as today, have over 13 chambers and organizations supporting us in this program today, and I'd like to read just a quick roll call of them. So we have Cam McCall, Joe Chi, our South Chamber, Brittany Bassant, Coconut Grove, Lilia Garcia, Coral Gables, Mark Trowbridge, Greater Miami, Alfred Sanchez, Greater Miami and the Beaches Hotel Association, Wendy Carlesis, Hialeah, Mandy Yanis, Key Biscayne, Tatiana Choachi, Miami Beach, Jerry Libin, Miami-Dade, Eric Knowles, Miami Gardens, Andre Williams, and from the South Dade, Kerry Black. For all of our panel members today, we have a very special door prize that we just received from the JW Marriott Turnberry Resort here in Aventura. So this is an opportunity for us to thank all of our law enforcement people on today for all that you do in some of these difficult times. We will draw the winning name right after the meeting. That winner will receive a 2-day, 1-night stay at the JW Marriott Resort here in Aventura, and it includes everything, including Tidal Cove Water Park entrance. For all of our law enforcement departments, fire rescue, and active military, our thanks continue to all of you during these times for your incredible offer. And please remember the JW Marriott Resort also has just announced over the summer months and the next couple of months to all of those law enforcement, fire rescue, and active military. They have a special going on for all of you. So please reach out to them. It's only open to law enforcement, fire rescue, and active military. Again, as I said, please stay on mute. What I'd like to do now is we have two special sponsors for today's program. Tim McKee from KW Property Management Consulting and Dmitry Shaposhnikov from FrandMe Law Enforcement. So
Can
Tim,
I jump
if you
in
would-
1 second, please? I think there was one chief that we missed, and that's North Miami Chief Larry Juriga. I know he's.
Okay,
So
if I
thank you.
did that,
Ready.
I apologize, Larry. So to our two sponsors today, what I'd like to do now is, Tim, just please unmute yourself and give us a hello from KW Property Management.
Thanks so much, Gary, and hello from KW Property Management. It's a pleasure for KW to be part of today's Aventura Marketing Council monthly meeting. As irony would have it, we sponsored a meeting last year on March 10th, which was the last time we all met in person at the JW Marriott. So fast forward a year, a lot's changed. But we are a Miami-based property management company with offices across the state of Florida. We've developed a reputation for high quality and personalized service. We were founded in 2004. We now manage 200 associations, 90,000 units with 1,800 people. KW brings an engaging approach to management. We have a strong presence managing Aventura properties and impacting the lifestyle of a few thousand people in the city of Aventura. We are always very pleased when we get the call from Elaine to be able to participate in these events. So on behalf of everyone at KW, I want to personally thank each police department that's represented today for protecting and serving and giving us the opportunity to be part of today's event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim, and thank you for your continued support. Our second sponsor today to give a brief introduction is Dmitry Shaposhnikov. Dmitry is with FrandMe Law Enforcement. And I also just want to give recognition to Dmitry because Dmitry sits with me on the Aventura Police Foundation Board of Directors. Dmitry?
Thanks, Gary. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dmitry Shaposhnikov, founder of FrandMe Law Enforcement. Basically, it's a top-down law enforcement app that provides immediate real-time communications within a secure network. Among many great features, one of our most popular feature is the global feature where multiple police agencies can connect with each other simultaneously for any important messages. Some of the agencies that are here already using FrandMe Law Enforcement, which is Aventura, North Miami Beach, North Miami. And basically, if you have any other questions, or if you'd like to see a little bit more, please go to friendmelawenforcement.com to get a little more information. And now it is my honor to present our state attorney, Katherine Fernandez Rundle. I've had the privilege of working with our state attorney, Katherine Fernandez Rundle, and her team on her human trafficking unit. And we all can understand, of course, why she has been reelected over and over again since she is taking office since 1993. Ms. Rundle is an innovator for groundbreaking accomplishments, including Florida's first domestic violence unit, misdemeanor domestic violence court, Dade's nationally recognized drug court, protecting the rights of children, and bringing crime prevention help with her community outreach division. She has pioneered the fight against human trafficking of our children, and day by day doing so much more, as everyone knows. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to introduce your state attorney, Katherine Fernandez Rundle.
Thank you so much, Dmitry, for that very kind introduction. And I also want to thank Elaine Adler. Someone said a few minutes ago when she calls, well, we all know we don't say no, we always say yes. And she is amazing, and I thank you so much. And Dmitry, I'm going to try, I hope I don't do justice to your last name, Shaposhnikov. Thank you so much from FrandMe Law Enforcement. And I just, a little personal, professional privilege here to say thank you for what you've done to help my office, especially on the topic of accessing our community to a much greater level than we were before. You've been a really great addition and asset to us. And in the area of human trafficking, thank you for what you have done. And I want to thank Gary Pyatt and the entire Aventura Marketing Council. You've been my friend and a business support system for this community for years. And of course, I want to just tell you that, you know, of all of our community partners, Amateur Marketing Council and the community they represent has really been the very heart and soul of our Miami-Dade's business community. And I don't need to tell anybody that, again, Elaine Adler is simply a miracle worker. She's so deeply is committed to bringing local business community forward as visible partners. And she's always putting all of us together all the time. And she wants to make our place, and she does make our community a much better place to shop, work, and raise our families. I also want to thank our sponsors, KW Property Management and Consulting, and again, Fran Me Law Enforcement. And a big shout out and a huge thank you to all the 13 chambers of commerce from throughout our community for joining us here today. I know that all of the participating business chambers of commerce want to expand their understanding of the daily chores, goals, and difficulties that each police officer working in Miami-Dade County, especially in the year of COVID, has been impacted, how difficult it has been. We particularly are focused on 3 of the very difficult issues today, and that's the impact that COVID and law enforcement has had in the areas of hate crimes, human trafficking, and domestic violence. Simply put, COVID has made the job of keeping our community safe a more difficult experience for all of us in law enforcement. So to address these difficulties and differences in the year of COVID, we are privileged to have with us today a group of some of the most respected law enforcement officers and leaders in America. And I mean that sincerely. I travel and meet with law enforcement all over this country. And I can say hands down, the collaboration, the mutual respect and support that we have within our law enforcement community and then the larger community is bar none the best in America. So our first topic today is going to be in the area of hate crimes. And joining me today on that topic is El Portal Chief David Magnuson, Aventura Chief Brian Pegas, who's been a key partner in this. University of Miami Chief David Rivera. Hi, David. Good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. That's not to the exclusion of all the others. I've seen a lot of you. And our Surfside Chief Julio Hierro, North Miami Beach Police Department Richard Rand, and then someone we've all been thinking a lot about, Richard Clemens from Miami Beach. We've been watching and empathizing with you and the struggles that you have been through in your community, especially of late. So thank you all very much for joining us today. I hope I didn't leave anyone out. Okay, good. So let's get started on hate crimes. Hate crime instances are some of the most community hurtful types of crimes and incidents imaginable. These incidents are intended to intimidate a whole community and make people feel helpless. That's why my hate crimes unit works to gather sufficient evidence needed to bring these incidents before our criminal courts. Based on police department statistics collected from the major cities across the United States, the Center for the Study of Hate Crime Extremism found a nearly 150% surge in anti-Asian hate crimes, particularly blaming Asian Americans for the origin and the spread of COVID-19 during the pandemic. At the same time, the study found that nationally, overall hate crimes fell by 7%. Locally, we seem to have had a number of anti-Semitic hate crime incidences, such as ugly graffiti and loud screaming hateful confrontation during this year of COVID. Sadly, it seems that the often ugly national dynamics of the past year seems to have empowered some individuals towards such behaviors. So to each of you, has your department experienced incidents of this type? Is it beyond the normal evidence gathering process common to every investigation? Have you taken extra steps to address such potential situations and calm the fears of those affected? So who would like to jump in and start the conversation?
I will.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. El Portel, it's a small village in the overall scheme of things, with my esteemed colleagues standing by. But it's a very diverse area, very diverse community. It's a potpourri of everything imaginable. We haven't had incidents pre-pandemic, and we haven't had any hate crimes per se. That being said, from the police point of view, I'm in constant touch with the ADL and the information that gets put out, and I forward that to our officers. So our department too is a wide array of different types of people as well. And I'm proud to say that although we're at a much lower, ability, a much lower weight class per se, but it's all the same in the end. And there's a mutual respect with the community. We haven't had that, but we keep an eye out for that. As you said a few minutes ago, I mean, it is on the rise. Certainly, I know Merrick Garland spoke of it the other day with what's going on with the Asian community. And, sadly, speaking as a historian, there's been a number of times throughout history where you blame a group when there's a pandemic. The Jews were blamed for poisoning the wells during the plague. And then and being a Jew, I can tell you, I've heard a lot of the things too, not to my face per se, or not certainly in uniform, but you pick up on a lot of the tension that's going on. You hear it, and it's not that you're looking for it, but it's there. There's a tension in the air. We can go back to the 80s with the advent of AIDS and how they found the patient zero and they pinned blame on it. And then what came from that? There was groups that were picked, don't get blood transfusions from them. So this is a common thing that goes on in pandemics. What's the cure for this? It's tough to say, except people have to be extremely resolute. The police departments, the communities they serve, they're not going to put up with it. And I know we stand here as a small department, but a shining beacon that we do have that with the community, that it's not tolerated. And thankfully, we haven't had to experience that. So I'll
Thank you. Thank you.
If I could chime in, Kathy, first of all,
Yes,
thank you
please.
for all the nice words you said about all of us. And it's my pleasure to be here with you all. David hit it right on the nail right on the head. Here we have, at the university, we have a huge, when Donna Shalala was president, she went to the Olympics in China and recruited a lot of Chinese students. So we don't really see a lot of hate crime, but we do see some hate incidents. And that's the big distinction that's so hard for law enforcement, is that some incidents are hate incidents, but they don't rise to the level of a hate crime. And it's really difficult to communicate that to the victims and to let them know that, just because somebody called you a name doesn't rise to the level of a hate crime. And like Magnuson said, the other crimes that we have seen here at the university are targeting the Jewish community. Those we see every year. We'll have swastikas painted somewhere, some bad language associated with that same swastika directed at some student on the floor. And the only way we try to combat that is through a lot of educational and crime prevention and awareness. The president here at the university is very quick to write a letter to the entire community saying how bad that is and how we don't tolerate it and how we'll go after you if we catch you. And we have caught a few students that just, have hate in their heart. But it is a very difficult crime to prosecute because it all revolves around the offender's frame of mind when he commits the crime against the targeted group. But your prosecutors have been wonderful, helping us navigate those waters.
Thank you.
Catherine, So Chief Clements, I believe, has to leave, so I think he would like to go next. Sorry.
Yes, please, Chief
Yeah,
Clements.
thank you. And just to go by what both David said, really for the most part, it is a challenging crime to deal with. But moreover, I think one of the things that we've seen, Kathy, and it's a tribute to your prosecutors and your hate crimes division, is a willingness for them to work on all instances that we believe, fit within that category. I mean, I could go back and, look at our 2019 numbers where we had 29 instances that we believed, kind of met the thresholds, if you will. And there were several arrests made, associated with that collaboration with your office. But one thing that we're finding is really crucial in our success in order to be able to combat that is documentation. Don't just push something off. Do not leave something out of an offense incident report or an A form if you believe that it's directly attributed to the crime or the committing of the crime. And our department's been very good about that. We'll continue to do that. As you know, we have a huge melting pot of people that come into the city on a weekly basis. And the one thing that we don't want to ever be known about or known as is a city that's not tolerant of people's differences. And again, we do a good job of that. And working with your office it's just been a really good experience for us across the board when we really feel strongly about whether or not something should be prosecuted as a hate crime. So I thank you for that.
Thank you, Chief, and that is true. You've done a marvelous job working with us, and it is a very high threshold, as both the previous Davids had said.
Hey, Kathy, it's Chief Piggies from Aventura. Hi. Well, I just want to say, a common theme with all of the chiefs that have spoken so far, and I'm sure I can speak for every chief that's here on the conference call, is there is a zero tolerance for hate in our community, and we do everything we can to combat that. But you mentioned something when you were talking before that I think is extremely relevant, and how hate crimes impact the community, and it's fear. Fear, I can tell you here in Aventura, we have a large Jewish population, and I can tell you that just an incident of somebody saying something, putting a hate symbol someplace, the fear that causes in the community, it's almost like, if anybody happened, I remember when I was younger, when we had somebody that broke into our home. It's probably the most invasive thing that you can do. It makes you feel unsecure. It makes you feel unsafe, that there's somebody lurking behind every shadow and behind every garbage can, every tree. So it's something that we have zero tolerance for. And we had a wake-up call back in 2016. And for some of you may or may not know, it was the James Medina case. It was a huge case here. There was an individual that was radicalized but through a local mosque and some other people, and wanted to come here to the Aventura Turnberry Jewish Center, and initially wanted to shoot up the Turnberry Jewish Center, and then that later morphed into dropping a bomb inside the facility. We worked with our federal partners for months and months and months on this case, doing surveillance around the clock. And we're able to make an arrest and make a solid case on him, and he ended up going to life in prison. But that wake-up call, led us to, especially when I became chief, is working closer with your office and with our federal partners by embedding somebody in the Joint Terrorism Task Force. We also work hand in hand with the Greater Miami Jewish Federation. We're in contact constantly with all of our synagogues and their security personnel, and we facilitate monthly meetings to go over sharing intelligence, what trends are, to get information from them, to talk about best practices, to inform our rabbis and our JTTF detectives and other detectives, especially during the High Holy Days and Passover recently, went around to all the synagogues to assure them that we're on top of things, any intelligence that we have, flyers or any suspicious information, to work on that. But I also want to thank, we had a recent case and we worked with your office. There was an individual that suffered from mental illness that was targeting one of our kosher markets. And that caused such fear in the community because, he'd be arrested for something minor, he would get out, and for some reason he kept coming back here and tried to instill fear in the community. And we were able to work with Howard Rosen from your office, who was incredible, and was able to put this person away where he needed to be to protect the community, and we were able to resolve the issue. So again, working with you, with our federal partners, and staying in touch with the community are really keys to success. And zero tolerance. There's zero tolerance for hate. And as for why people have hate in their hearts, I mean, that's a question for another day and a topic for another day, but it is there. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Absolutely, Chief. Thank you. That was very valuable observations on your part. I was in your beautiful city 2 nights ago. So thank you for the great work that you do and the partnership that we have.
Ms. Rundle, if I may, this is Chief Flowers from Bell Harbor Police Department. As a reminder, I wanted to let the panel know that in 2018, the Miami-Dade County Associations and Chiefs of Police, we passed a resolution encouraging all municipalities, all law enforcement agents, and this was something that was passed unanimously by all the police chiefs in Miami-Dade County. Whereas the resolution that encourages all police departments to use the definition by the Department of State and the federal hate crime statutes in all prosecutions or in all incidents that involve hate crimes. So that was something that was agreed upon unanimously by the Miami County Associations of Chiefs of Police, and it was adopted and it was enacted in 2018. And while, if I can have just one more second, I remember we had an incident here in Bell Harbor where we had some of our Orthodox Jewish residents that was walking down Collins Avenue, and we had an individual who spat on them as they were going, and they had to run away and hide inside one of the buildings until police came. And our officers, our detectives, along with your special prosecutor that you have assigned to the hate crimes unit, we were able to prosecute this individual. He eventually, we avoided trial and he took a plea, and which involved some jail time. So, I want to thank your office and the prosecutor who worked with our detectives in effectuating that arrest on this incident in Bell Harbor.
Thank you, Chief Flowers. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
If I could just briefly, I'll make it very quick. I think everybody's brought some great stuff to the table. And obviously, as has already been stated, one of the biggest issues we have generated when we have these kinds of crimes is fear in the community. And unfortunately, sometimes information gets out that's inaccurate and is really not substantial or even the reality of what happened. Here in our community, we've been very fortunate, we've been very blessed because the last incident that we had was 2015. But having said that, there's been little things that happen throughout the community that people sometimes get really spun up. And before you know it, you have information being put out on social media platforms that nobody's really monitoring, making up stories of swastikas being painted. And it's really important that we have communication with our communities as quickly, as effectively as possible, to be transparent, but also to put the facts out so that someone else isn't telling the story for us. So that's the only thing I would add. And I'm not being paid by FranMe. I'm just telling you that's factual information based on my experience. That's all I have to add. Thank you.
That's a very good point, Chief. Thank you. How social media can stir, unfortunately, the hate that exists in others as well. You're absolutely right. False narratives can be very painful. Thank you.
Kathy, I'll speak last, and obviously most of the valid points have been covered already. First of all, I want to thank you and your fantastic staff for just assisting and supporting us for these many, many years in keeping this community safe. So I greatly appreciate that. And it's an honor to be here with my colleagues and friends. One of the main factors, as you know, from Surfside, this is a small community. We have 0 to no violent crime, thankfully. The main topic that's been brought up that really affects us is the fear factor within our community. We do have a large Jewish population. I work very hand in hand with Bay Harbor Islands, Bal Harbor. Pretty much these 3 agencies are one team. Surfside has a couple of large religious institutions. The Shul of Bal Harbor, while it's named that, is in Surfside. So we have that responsibility. And one of the biggest things that we've done is just great community partnerships with our religious leaders. I just hosted a Passover safety meeting a couple of weeks back where Rabbi Mark Rosenberg was gracious enough to join us. And with the team of leaders I was here, we came up with an operational plan for the Passover holiday. We do that for every high holiday. We partner with these religious leaders, so they give us their schedules when the folks are going to be walking to the synagogues and back and forth. And again, being a small jurisdiction, I rely heavily on the assistance of Bal Harbor and Bay Harbor personnel to assist us and collaborate in protecting these residents as they're walking to and from the shul, etc. But as Chief Diaz said, the social media aspect is also huge. The Jewish people, I will say one great thing in their favor, they communicate effectively and immediately. At the first sight of any situation, from here to the Brooklyn Jewish population, they are made aware of the incident. And Rabbi Mark Rosenberg has been a great partner in sometimes quashing false information and easing the fears of those community members. So the biggest thing that I can say we have done is build those partnerships with the leaders of the synagogues, and that assists us in making our community feel safer.
Thank you so much, Chief Yarrow. That's very powerful. I don't know if anybody has anything they want to add to this. Chief Flowers.
Just real quick, State Attorney, Rich Rand from North Miami Beach. As you all know, we have a very prominent Jewish community in our area. Northeast 10th Avenue, we have 7 temples within a mile of each other. So we have a very large Jewish area. And some of the things that we've put into place with through our last chief and myself is we've actually opened up channels to be able to converse with each other. There's an NMB Shul, North Miami Beach Shul security WhatsApp group that we have. When something goes out, we all know about it. I find out about things immediately. We also have made very good contacts within the community to access the video from these temples. When something happens, we're given video almost immediately. I've also put up LPRs, license plate readers, in the area around the shuls, both mobile and permanent LPRs that read license plates. So we have been able to identify a lot of these cars and these people that drive through these communities and yell out these horrific things to the Jewish community. You know, it's very offensive. And these tools have helped us tremendously in identifying these people. I would be remiss in saying that we work very closely with Brian Rafke's team. We had the rabbi that was killed in the county's jurisdiction, Rabbi Raskin. North Miami Beach worked very close with them. We also had another shooting at Temple Young Israel a couple of years ago. We also worked very close with Miami-Dade. We were able to catch the person who was responsible for that. And you know, another great thing that we do is we use our crime prevention team to get out there to do surveys of these temples. What are their vulnerable points? Where are their cameras? Who's responsible for the cameras? Who can we call in the middle of the night to get this video? Because these kind of things need to be addressed immediately. Because if we allow it to happen at one temple, it's just a matter of time before they hit Bow Harbor or Bay Harbor within an hour or two. These things spread very quickly in the Jewish community. If you don't know that, I'm Jewish. I'm from North Miami Beach. When something happens in the Jewish community, people in Israel know about it almost immediately. And we get phone calls from all over the world when this happens. So I'm a big proponent, you know, in the Jewish community, getting involved, showing your faces, getting your community patrol officers out there, building relationships, and most importantly, working with the state attorney's office to make sure that we have solid cases on these criminals through our detective bureaus, and following up with these cases and making examples out of people that this is not permitted in any community, whether it's the Jewish community, the Haitian community, it doesn't matter the community. We do not put up with this type of behavior. And that's just some of the things that we're doing here in North Miami Beach.
Thank you, Chief Rand. That's such an important message. It makes me think of that adage, one of us is not safe, none of us are safe.
I was going to add, Ms. Fernandez, just piggybacking on Chief Rand, you know, the Miami-Dade Police Department Homeland Security Bureau houses the Southeast Florida Fusion Center, which is a platform for all agencies within our region, Region 7. And that really is a way to share intelligence in a way that we can share any type of information that's pivotal from all the way from Palm Beach to Monroe County. So they also put on quarterly trainings where they will go over signs and symptoms of terrorism that, you know, some of the security or some of your private sector folks can get involved with, of what to look for. So that's also a resource, as well as all the personnel there as well that are always willing to help.
I appreciate that, Major, and I'm really glad that the chiefs did mention Metro-Dade Police Department, because our experience is they are a very critical partner and have been a very good partner with all of us on these hate crimes. In fact, Metro-Dade and myself, along with FIU and Save Dade, we did a study. And one of the things that we discovered was a lot of, you know, so much of this is unreported just for fear and, and unfortunately, sometimes they feel ashamed, which they shouldn't, right? Because they're the victims of this hate. But they're also afraid nothing's going to happen. So it's a mixture of these inhibitors that really don't allow them to come forward. So one of the things that I know all you chiefs know this and your departments do, but for those that are listening that may not know that, we do have a very specialized unit that a lot of the chiefs have talked about. It's a hate crimes unit. There's a 24/7 hotline number. We do training with our partners, ADL, the Greater Miami Jewish Services. We do partnerships with all of these police departments, and we try to support each other on these types of crimes. And so these lawyers, the prosecutors, that's all they specialize. I believe we have about 8 or 9 of them at this point, and they all do it because they feel from the bottom of their heart that it's something that they're doing extra in addition to what they're doing because they're passionate about holding folks that carry such hate and act it out accountable in our system. And also, as you said, to get a message out there to those that don't want to report it, right? That we are all in this together, and we are there united to assist in rooting out, diminishing hate crimes in our community. So I want to thank every one of you, all you chiefs, for everything you do and have done. Your officers are amazing, and it's just a privilege and an honor for me to work with you. And thank you so much.
Katherine, before we transition to the next topic, I just want to acknowledge that City of Aventura Mayor Weissman is present here.
Oh, great. Thank you. Did they want to speak? I'm sorry. I don't.
Enid?
Just welcome, Kathy. It's always
hi,
wonderful to see you. It's wonderful to see you. And a big shout out to all of our police chiefs. You and your officers make our cities safe. Just know we have your backs. That's 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. I can't top that one. Thank you. Good to see you. Good to see you. So if we have any more comments on this, if not, we'll head into the next, because Elaine's going to ring that bell any second now, right? So
she already texted me that we're 2 minutes late, so
I knew it. All right. Well, thank you again. Keep up the good work. Stay safe. Stay healthy, and know that you are appreciated in this community in a large and grateful way. Thank you. So now we're going to go to our next section. As all these wonderful chiefs, some may be staying on. Everyone is invited to stay. This section is going to be on human trafficking. And I think you heard in Dimitri's introduction that actually our community, our model here, has become one for the entire country. The partnerships that we've built, the safety net that we've built, the awareness campaigns that we've all done together has become a model for the entire country. They come from all over to host conferences here. We train, they go to the one and only that I'm aware of Human Trafficking Center that exists right here a couple of blocks from my office and the courthouse and the shelters and all the other safety net of services that we've built over the last 8 years. So my question to all of you wonderful, extraordinary law enforcement officers who care so deeply about this modern day slavery is, we know that one thing is certain, and that's just because we were dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic does not mean that criminals, particularly human traffickers, have stopped committing crimes. Human trafficking is a 24/7 nonstop business unaffected by a global pandemic. It's abuse of the young, often our own children and our communities. And their aim is to steal their lives and their futures by transforming into walking cash machines whose sole job is to enrich the trafficker. And during this pandemic, a number of aggressive investigations by the multi-agency human trafficking task force that I have led, and thank you to all of you police chiefs who donated an executive person to be on this task force. We wouldn't have this task force but for your involvement. But this task force, it has led to a number of arrests of traffickers just recently, and in rescuing victims such as we had a 14-year-old girl, an 18-year-old girl, and a 20-year-old female, plus a 20-year-old woman, while targeting specific hotels. We were able, through a lot of undercover operations, through a lot of for detailed surveillance, we were able to pull these human traffickers out into the open. We were able to rescue them. Thank you, shout out to our hotels, especially in Miami Springs and South Miami that coordinated with us. And we were able to, and in one way, at least stop those immediate businesses. So we want to know, if you could, how has this impacted your personal departments, your communities, and your jobs? This pandemic has placed extraordinary demands on every single police department, sometimes forcing an understandable temporary setting aside of specialty investigations, which I said, you all donate a lot to this task force. But looking forward through 2021, how do your departments, how are you going to work on this very important crime that continues as an important investigative focus in your departments, in your community, with all the other things that you have to balance at the same time? Who would like to go first?
Ma'am, if it's all right with you, I'll start just as I have a couple kind of a dual role. So in my role as president of the Dade Chiefs Association, I think I wanted to just highlight the fact of that task force. I'm glad you brought it up, just because it kind of goes along with our mission as an association, which is to really have the cooperation and coordination amongst all the law enforcement agencies in order to tackle this extremely serious issue. I think I read in a police executive research forum report on human trafficking that there's an estimated 20 to 40 million victims globally, and an estimated $150 billion global business in human trafficking. And I think now the local agencies are starting to recognize the impact that that's having, and are starting to, as we do here, put together these task forces. Now, in my role as the major in charge of criminal investigations for the city of Miami Beach, we have a dedicated human trafficking unit, and we've dedicated one of our sergeants to that task force that's head up over at the state attorney's office and is led by Alicia Priovalos. And they do a phenomenal job. And I think, and I'm sure some of the other chiefs will probably touch on this, it's also important to note that some of these, a lot of times, the human trafficking goes hand in hand with illicit narcotics, because we've seen what start out as narcotic investigations turn into human trafficking investigations, where we're able to recover victims and then use that information in order to go after the trafficker. So I just wanted to say that from both the hats that I wear, from the Dade Chiefs perspective and the Miami Beach criminal investigations perspective. And I look forward to hearing some of the other chiefs.
Yeah, if I could just interrupt there a second, and forgive me, but I do, and I say this publicly, and you probably all have heard me say this. Major, you are right. Miami Beach does such a phenomenal job, and that sergeant is terrific. It made a great case recently, but just the passion that Miami Beach has shown from the very beginning. You were one of the first departments that really stepped up to assist and help us build this community-wide task force. So yes, thank you. And I thanked your chief and your previous chiefs and your mayor and your manager many times, but I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, it comes from the top. It comes from Chief Clements and Deputy Chief Wayne Jones and Paul Acosta. So thank you.
Absolutely, very grateful. Who else would like to?
I'll go next. How are you doing, Kathy?
Thelma, how are you?
I'm doing fine. As you know, this hideous crime leaves no race, no gender, no socioeconomic area untouched. And so it's important for us to make sure that we safeguard not only our public, but the victims that sustain this or are victims of this particular crime. And it's important for us to make sure that we train our personnel importantly, and as well as the community, and make sure that they know exactly what the signs are and what things to look out for. working together with your organization, as long with the other departments. As you know, we have detectives assigned to the task force. It's so important for us to exchange information and make sure that we stay on this, because you just had the Super Bowl, and as you know, that's a hot time, especially for these individuals to take advantage of our loved ones, and that's what I'm going to call it, our loved ones, because we have it right here in our backyard. So it's important for us to continuously work together, make sure that we all look for the different signs, and don't take things for granted, because it can come in any area of our communities. And that's all I have to say for this.
Thank you, Chief, for making that point. You are a great partner. And you are right, our loved ones. I always say they're our children. They're in our schools or in our parks, in our neighborhoods. And if we're not looking for human trafficking, we won't see human trafficking. So thank you, Chief Noel Pratt, so much.
Hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
Hi. How are you today?
Good, good, good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. And on the heels of what Delma said, you know, you spearheaded the state attorney's office, and you and your leadership during the Super Bowl. That was instrumental bringing, you know, law enforcement together during that time. It kind of brought human trafficking, I think, on the map here locally for many officers. We have a young wave, a wave of younger officers in the city, you know, over 30, obviously, municipalities that have been kind of on a hiring spree over the last few years. And all these officers are, you know, not keen and cognizant on human trafficking and its impact. They do have other awesome skill sets, you know, the ability to navigate, you know, social media threats, dealing with the vaping epidemic, dealing with a host of other things that many of us in senior law enforcement positions may not have grown up with. But definitely human trafficking is not one of the things that you immediately think of when you think of becoming a police officer. So the training that has been spearheaded locally here has been great. From officers in the police academy, something that is not discussed very often, but the implementation by the Region 14 Training Center, and for those individuals who are not familiar with that, is the governing body who creates a curriculum for what the police cadets in the academy learn. Human trafficking components have been infused in that 480-hour training course to become a police officer. So it's really revamped the training and put that on the forefront of new officers coming on board into this profession. Even locally, we've had human trafficking summits put on by local universities. I know Florida National University has a yearly human trafficking summit that we've been part of, and you as a state attorney as well. We've had at the county level the conference put out by the Community Action and Human Services Department, as well as another conference. Even at the school board level, we had the superintendent and school board members proffering and passing board items guaranteeing that human trafficking education was going to be taught in our schools and at every school. That's huge. You're talking about, you know, 400 plus schools receiving students in those schools receiving human trafficking education. At the school level, we kind of are a unique police department because we kind of play in every sandbox. You know, we have schools in 25 different jurisdictions, so we work well with these agencies, and we have just in our agency a team of 10 detectives who solely, you know, focus a priority of their work on human trafficking initiatives and prevention and other components that really are keen. We work together and train school staff and school site administrators. They're our first line of defense in these cases. Recently we had a case at an elementary school, Miami-Dade Senior, where we worked hand in hand with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in arresting a teacher that was involved. And it's still an open case, you know, so we can't comment on it further, but we brought people, school board employees. So when you have school board employees who themselves are facilitating, you know, human trafficking victims, and it's just, you know, that anything can happen. So we're really internally looking as ways to prevent that, to mitigate, and to obviously intervene and work with our partners. So thank you all for putting this together, because it gives an opportunity to make sure that we revisit and keep it as a priority.
Chief Lopez, you are so right. Thank you so much for emphasizing what the school system has done. And I have to start off by telling you, and some of my partners here have heard this before, it's all about awareness and understanding what it is. So when you talk about some of your young cadets or the younger police officers not getting it, a lot of us didn't get it. And, you know, I'm the first one to tell you 8 years ago, when Florida was ranked 3rd in the United States with the number of human trafficking victims, I called my team together and I said, we are? And of course, Miami-Dade was number 1 in Florida. And I said, where are these cases? And we had like 2 or 3. And so what it meant was we didn't really understand what it was. And so we have all been, you know, starting in my office, we had to really learn, change the laws. We try to do training. We do training within our own office. You know, look at prostitution cases when they come in. What are we really looking for? What are the signs? And the school system has been a huge partner from the very beginning. I remember the superintendent said, let's do a contest for, you know, the 13 districts, and whoever wins, and it was a contest for the children to paint pictures of what is human trafficking. And so if anybody understands who might be the victims, you know, it's those other children, those eyes and ears. And I'm going to close with this because I could talk about a whole bunch of different cases, but actually it was some cafeteria workers and some trust school counselors that helped bring attention to us and to you, to your police department. And you've been part of that task force from the very beginning. And we were able to rescue a 12 and 13-year-old little girls. So thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for your involvement. And trust me, we'll continue to train and do awareness together, because the more we learn together, the better we will be as a law enforcement team.
Thank you.
So let's see, who else do we have here?
If we're ready to move on to the next one. I know we're a very tight schedule, and I want to recognize Al Eskenazi, who, Al, if you could wait, we have a very limited time at the end. If we can recognize Al's a great individual. I'd love to hear from him, but I think we have to move on to the domestic violence now.
Okay, so I'm 2 minutes over. Sorry about that. I gave a little bit too much of a speech, but all right, let's move on to the next topic now, which is domestic violence. I think we all know that for those that have been living in an abusive relationship, being in self-isolation due to the COVID-19 pandemic and staying at home with someone who is an abuser could be a matter of life or death. So when families and couples are placed into long periods of forced interaction and proximity, tensions can build up in a household and explode into violence. A push, a shove, a slap, or much, much worse. A cycle of violence may start, which can turn a home into a prison. It can be a prison for the children who may also live there, as well as victims who we also know are very direct and indirect victims of domestic violence. Children often hurt in these incidences, and living in a violent household teaches them that violence is an acceptable way to resolve family problems. Kids that grow up with domestic violence often copy and repeat that behavior in their own lives and relationships. And we know that from the Department of Justice studies that say children repeat what they see. Each of us recognizes the need to protect all the victims of domestic violence during these very turbulent times. What has been the experience of your department in dealing with domestic violence in the year of COVID? Have your officers reported seeing any surprising trends develop? And if so, what approach is your department taking in dealing with that trend? So with that, I'm going to open it up to our distinguished panelists on this. And so who would like to start?
I'll start. Again, hello everyone. Rich Rand from North Miami Beach. I did some research on this, and I actually pulled the numbers from my agency. And believe it or not, numbers, I have to preface it with this. The numbers that I'm seeing don't necessarily reflect reality. Because when you talk about domestic violence, you talk about very specific things that happen inside of a home. Whether it's a mother, a wife, or a husband, people are concerned with COVID. People are concerned with calling the police. What's going to happen to my husband? What's going to happen to my wife if they get arrested for domestic violence and they go to jail and they contact COVID? Then they're going to either come home eventually and they're going to get sick. Where are they going to stay? A lot of the times, these people that we arrest for domestic violence are the breadwinners. So a lot of the times you're going to have victims, people that aren't going to call, they're going to live with the abuse for now. The other thing too is, and we see restraining orders from what I'm learning and what I'm reading are down because people don't want to go to the courthouse. They don't want to be exposed to COVID. They don't want to get out of their house. They're afraid to get out of their house. So while these numbers really don't tell us the truth about what's going on behind closed doors with domestic violence, at least not in North Miami Beach, so far in 2020, I was down 24% in my domestic violence cases. I had 105 reported to law enforcement, which really, you know, we do a lot of things here in North Miami Beach. Some of the things we do is our domestic violence annual walk. I know Chief Jariga and a lot of other state attorney's office joins us, and we walk through the streets of North Miami Beach. We have very aggressive detectives that go after these offenders for domestic violence. They don't just sit on somebody's desk and we don't forget them. We put our PC messages in and we do our due diligence. So we're very aggressive with that. I can tell you that the state attorney's office is absolutely tremendous with filing these cases. Unfortunately, a lot of the victims don't show up, right? And if detectives don't put good cases together, dot their I's, cross their T's, unfortunately, the state has no other alternative but to look at other alternative for some of these cases when most of these people need counseling. So I'm not really sure that I can quantify the amount of domestic violence cases in the city because I think COVID pretty much changed the way that domestic violence is being reported. However, I can tell you that I have seen an increase in sexual battery cases. I can't tell you at this point if that's because more people are at the house together and some family relatives are moving in with other family relatives and uncles and so are taking advantage of this. But I can tell you that sexual crimes did rise last year for us. And it might also be because of the Me Too movement. So there's a lot that goes into play with domestic violence issues. Again, we have a very proactive advocate, Renee Darden, who's my victim crime advocate that we follow up with. We offer safe space, we offer hotels, we offer whatever it takes. We have our domestic violence walk. We just started our PAC meeting, Police and Community Together, where our command staff, our PAL, and everybody's getting out there and talking to people. And believe it or not, people are pulling us aside and telling us stories that we wouldn't even know about had we not been out in the community and been face to face with these people. So I think that domestic violence is very important, but I don't know that the numbers are really telling the truth. Thank you,
Chief. And you know, you underscore something that I just want to quickly share with those that are listening. You're right, Chief. We became so concerned. The Chief Judge of the Domestic Violence Division and Yvonne Mesa, who runs all the community services, the shelters for our victims in our community. The numbers were down. They weren't showing up. They weren't calling. And it's for a lot of the reasons that you said. And they also were afraid to even go into shelters because of COVID. So COVID in so many ways kept that isolation and the victimization at a higher level. So you're absolutely right. The numbers don't reflect that. It was so frightening to us in the system that we started a whole campaign. I guess I want to say it was about maybe 4 months ago, reaching out, getting people out there and trying to figure out signs. Because if you're on even a Zoom like this and your abuser's watching you or picking up the phone, and I say he because most of the abusers unfortunately are males, it's a problem. And so you make me think that maybe we need to reboot that campaign back up on a community-wide basis. Thanks so much for everything you do, Chief Rand.
Yes,
Who
ma'am,
else?
you're welcome.
Thank you.
I'll jump in there if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Larry Jariga. How are you, ma'am?
Hi, Chief Jariga. How are you? I don't see you, but I'm so happy you're with us. There you are.
Oh, there I am. I know Rich and NMB have been doing a great job with their domestic violence walk each year, as he mentioned, bringing awareness to the communities. And although they had a decrease in North Miami in 2020, we had a 7% increase in our domestic violence cases. And as he mentioned specifically, we also had an increase in the number of sex crimes related to domestic violence. What we've been doing, in addition to using our victim advocate and our investigators, we've been teaching from the start our officers the need to be that calming presence as they get to the scene. Similar to when we go to when we're dealing with events during hurricanes, everybody is at a heightened stress level. And we recognize that, and our officers need to be the calming presence when they arrive at the scene. Additionally, the isolation factor that you mentioned is a key component in these domestic violence issues. So although family and friends might miss the red flags because they're not necessarily with their family as often as they had been prior to the pandemic, our officers need to pick up on the red flags. They need to look for the signs. If somebody's cowering in the corner or somebody's not even making eye contact when they're going there. So as I mentioned, the importance of being the calming presence when they get there, and then also picking up on the red flags. That's what we've been pushing with our officers as they arrive at these scenes, because we have seen the increase.
Thank you, Chief Juriga. Really appreciate that.
I was going to add Brian Rafke, Miami-Dade Police Special Victims.
Yes, hi, Major.
So I was just going to add, and I'm sure everyone would agree that, the partnerships with people like your Division Chief Scott Dunn over at DV and Miss Mills, Natalie Snyder for our child abuse and sex crimes, and I know Alicia was already mentioned, and Jessica, those partnerships have been pivotal. I know during COVID, most of our meetings with them are on Zoom, or they have been. We're kind of phasing back to some more normalcy, but that's been a big help. I also sit on the Domestic Violence Oversight Board, and I know Ms. Rundle, you're very familiar with Carrie Sobel. She put together a work group to look at COVID-19 high-risk populations and kind of look at what we're doing. I'm lucky to sit on that work group too, and I know they're preparing a report that I think is about to come out, which really goes into a lot of kind of the advocacy things that are out there. As you guys mentioned, I know State Attorney's Office has been doing a lot of things, as well as the Women's Fund putting out billboards and things out in the community to let people know how to report domestic violence. And those things really have been pivotal, as long with all the other community outreach. I think Chief Randa mentioned doing walks and doing, those types of conversations. I sit on a committee also at Miami-Dade College to support domestic crimes and sexual crimes prevention. We do routine, conversations with students and get our victim advocates out to those areas as well. Just another note, the Lotus House Women's Shelter, which is the largest shelter in the state of Florida, actually reported an increase in women, youth, and children for 2020 that were reporting some type of violence in the household. And we know that whether numbers are up or down, which I know everyone's aware of this, what's happening in the home, oftentimes our victims are, especially during quarantine, are in isolation with their abusers. And we know a lot of these times these things don't get reported. So that's why messaging is so important and advocacy is so important. And I think the collaboration and cooperation with everybody here in your office is really what gives us the ability to be able to reach those victims as well. So.
Thank you, Major. And I have to really reciprocate to you, because all the leaders that you mentioned, and I was going to mention them at the end because it's all about the team, really. It's not about me, it's about the team. But it really respect working with you, Major. I know that you and Jessica Casso and Alicia Priovalos have rescued so many young girls, and I love that collaboration that we have built with your department in human trafficking and domestic violence, all the specialized units that you mentioned, because it really does take a partnership. So we thank you for calling out on these wonderful folks. And to reiterate, for those of you who don't know, Scott Dunn and Christina Mills are the head of both of our county court and felony division domestic violence. He mentioned Carrie Sobel. She's like the heart and soul of victim services for us here. She sits in my place on the Domestic Violence Oversight Board. She's an amazing lady. And Justin Funk, that we talked about when we talked about the hate crimes division, he and Jonathan Borst and his whole unit, they do an amazing job. They're training all the time. They're responding to the scene with officers. And then again, Alicia Priovalos and Bobby Navarro. Many of you may know Bobby from when he was in law enforcement, the police department of the city of Miami. And then years later with David Rivera over at the University of Miami, I was lucky enough to snag him. So he's heading human trafficking. And then Jessica Casso. Well, Jessica's just great in wearing all kinds of different hats. So I just wanted to say thank you back to you, Major for giving them that recognition, allowing me the opportunity to give them that recognition as well.
And I was gonna add, ma'am, that Natalie Snyder assisted us with that case with the guy that abducted the 12-year-old kid and sexually. She was so clutch in us for that case. I mean, the best of the best. You know?
Yeah, I have to tell you, Natalie Schneider, and what the Major's talking about is we have a specialized unit called the sex battery unit, which is really a rape. It's a sexual assault unit that deals primarily only with children. And even the best of the prosecutors in the business, and I'm sure it's true for police officers and victims advocates, those are the worst crimes. They're almost the hardest to deal with. They're emotionally very draining, very delicate, and you know how traumatized those victims have been. And so I will make sure to thank Natalie. I've already had independently, but on behalf of our community, on behalf of you, Major, and everyone who she serves, she has 7 lawyers that do, you know, an unspeakably good, difficult job. Thank you for that shout out. Thank you. That's a horrible case, by the way. I'm glad you found him so quickly.
Thank God.
Thank God.
Madam State Attorney, I don't know. I'm not sure if I have any more time. It's good to see you again. It's Ben Guerrero. How are you from FIU?
Oh, hi, Ben. I don't see you.
How are you?
How are you doing, Ben? I haven't seen you in a while. Back in uniform and not in the courtroom anymore.
It's been a while, not in the courtroom anymore. It's good to see you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to participate in this forum. I think it's extremely important. And I'll make it short because I know we're running out of time. I just want to say that, you know, some people don't realize just how prevalent dating violence here is for students on campus. For us, it's a little bit different than the municipalities. During COVID, we had a decrease in dating violence just because the university was closed. So we didn't have a lot of students on housing and it decreased for us. However, it doesn't mean that they weren't experiencing these kinds of crimes outside the university. So we still work with our students every time that one of these incidents happens. We work with our victim empowerment. We work with the state attorney's office. We have something that I guess is another safety net to make people accountable for these types of incidents, which is our Title IX and our student conduct investigations that could lead to accountability, because sometimes these cases are not easy to prosecute criminally. But so we have an additional safety net that we have. And I just want to say just one final thing, that we can't forget the LGBTQ community. They are victims of domestic and dating violence. They're becoming victims more often. And I think it's something that we have to be very sensitive to in being able to address those cases in a really collaborative way with services and a lot of the things that go with the victimization of these types of crimes. So that's all I'll say. Thank you again for having me and giving me the opportunity to say my part. It was good seeing you again, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ben. And that was such an important point, because the victim services piece, I think we've all learned over the years, is absolutely critical to any sort of law enforcement initiative initially, and then of course for prosecution. So I don't know what we would do without the support of our victim services, both within our offices and our departments and in the community at large. And there are so many wonderful service providers here that we all rely on and we connect with, or care connectors is what I call us, right? And so Ben, thank you for what you do, and it's great to see you again. Glad you're doing well.
Katherine, you're doing great on time. If it's okay with you to go off agenda for 1 second. Al Eskenazi, who I bet is a fantastic individual. If you really could be really brief, Al, if you want to ask your question.
Okay, I'll be very brief. Good afternoon, State Attorney, and thank you very much to the Chamber of Commerce and yourself, and certainly Elaine for having me on. I just want to mention to the chiefs here that the Community Police Relations Foundation, or commonly known as CPR Foundation, has and stands ready to support individual municipalities, as we're doing with Director Ramirez, where we've set up a comfort room within Miami-Dade so that they can interview women and give them aid. We're also setting up with the room. We also will help them provide clothing, sustenance, and whatever else is necessary. So to the chiefs, I want you to know that we do stand by. We have special funds set aside for victim services. And look, we're here to support. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Al. I hope that our office can call on you as well. Sometimes we find ourselves in a tough spot with a victim, 12 years old, wants to go home to Georgia where she was trafficked from. And we don't always have the ability to get someone quickly to get a ticket. Elaine Adler and the marketing council Amateur Marketing Council have been so phenomenal. They've donated gift cards because sometimes we rescue victims, all of us, not just us, but we rescue victims in the middle of the night. And when we rescue them, they have nothing because we've taken them away from their abuser. So I'm so happy that you have done this and help our police departments and our victims, and hope that I can count on you perhaps sometime in the future as well.
We're here to serve, as most of the chiefs do know, and Howard Rosen is familiar with me. I sit with the Miami-Dade Chiefs Association. They give me the privilege of being a member, but you know, we're not here to supplement state and city responsibilities. I have to say that, but we are here for the immediate phone call that I understand there's no one else to step right in, and we're here for that. So yes, you can count on us, and we should develop this relationship a little further. Thank you.
We won't abuse it. We will appreciate it. Thank you. Anyone
Right on
else?
time. Doing great. Elaine, ready to close it up?
Okay, it's all.
Well, let's just see. I think is Chief Hudak still with us? And
yes, I am.
Absolutely, you're on this panel, as is Chief Daniel Jr. from Corrections. Are you still here with us too?
Hudak's still here.
I am
here. All right.
Well, we can't leave Ed Hudak and Danny Jr. out. So Ed, go first. Hi, Ed.
How you doing, Kathy? Listen, it's great to see you all. And again, I think similar to what all my other colleagues have seen, we have seen an uptick in the Gables in our domestic violence cases, although the types of the cases are a little bit different than what we're seeing. Obviously, I think the pandemic and the close quarters, if you will, really kind of created a lot of internal domestic violence issues with people coping with the stress of being confined. And a lot of our things that we saw in the Gables was not necessarily the quintessential domestic violence spouse on spouse. There was a lot of domestic violence between other members of the home where they were quarantined, as well as dealing with other psychological issues. To Chief DeRiga's point, and how we're teaching our officers, we were actually kind of working better with our intervention strategies. We had a lot of Baker Acts come out of those issues when children, spouses were definitely in distress, and that motive was not so much of an abuse, but as a reaction to the situation. The other thing, I think we got a lot of calls because people were home from other neighbors overhearing some of those things. So again, my training going back to the 90s when we started this, Kathy, with pushing forward, you know, the domestic violence, the moves unit, things like that, that training has led to us to be able to handle what has come up. Can't say enough about our partnerships throughout of dealing with not just your office, but, you know, the court clerks, the court's office, of getting people processed through. But we have had to kind of change our dynamic because we weren't seeing so much of an arrestable, but also somebody who was in dire need of psychiatric evaluation. And that's kind of what we saw on our side. So as much as we saw an uptick on some of the issues that we had talked about earlier in the day across the board in the Gables, the motives, if you will, for lack of a better term, of, you know, the close contact, the quarantine, was really kind of the motivation blowups, if you will, that led to us being noticed by other people in the neighborhoods because they overheard it. So different tactic We did have some success with a partnership that we have with a software provider where people were able to take videos or pictures and stream that real time to us, which helped us evidentially if we needed to have, and also in a protective fashion from a victim that they were streaming it live to our 911 center. So those kind of things we thought really kind of helped to keep those numbers really kind of level. And I think that's where you saw kind of a downtick for prosecutable cases sent to your office, Kath, because we were actually Baker acting people because they were truly in distress at that time. So that's kind of what we saw on the domestic violence front here.
Thank you, Chief Hood. I appreciate it. Sorry I didn't call on you early. I didn't see you.
That's all right. I was driving.
Hopefully not texting and you're parked.
No, ma'am. I am strictly parked right now.
And Chief Daniel Jr. is with us now.
Hi, Chief. There he is. Oh, he's all dressed up. How are you today?
How are you? How are you?
Very good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again for inviting me. Happy to be here. Thank you to Eileen. This is a very important topic. I know, although my friends over on the police side do an outstanding job, in some cases quelling these domestic violence incidents and deciphering and using discretionary on who needs to either leave the home, come to jail, etc. I know for a fact in 2020 during the pandemic, the Miami-Dade law enforcement community, we didn't want to bring people to jail, right? Because the last thing you want to do is further exacerbate a situation with a global pandemic and have people in more confined spaces at higher numbers than necessary. So naturally, the jail population saw a significant reduction to the number of inmates that we had in jail. But ultimately, as everyone before me has spoken, pointed out, that cabin fever kind of, during the pandemic, was evident where we saw an uptick in those domestic related charges. And we know this is not a gender specific issue, right? I read a study prior to COVID where it says 1 in every 4 women are victims of domestic violence, and 1 in every 7 men are also victims of domestic violence. And as Chief mentioned earlier, when you factor in the LGBT community, again, family versus family, et cetera, all of those components play an important role. So the jail's responsibility is more on a post-incident management model where the individual is brought to us and there's a determination made on whether or not the person can be released safely back to the home without having any negative outcomes. And a lot of times what we see is a lot of these individuals end up on our monitor release program. In 2020, during the pandemic, we increased our monitor release program, the number of clients on that program, from 800 to 1,300 in a matter of months, because we saw the importance of not trying to keep as little people confined in a jail as necessary and diverting them out to the community so that we don't, further exacerbate the pandemic situation. So that has been the impact, and ultimately in managing a large population on house arrest, we want to ensure that they're compliant with their restrictions and their parameters and not, coming in contact with the victims and so forth. So the impact on the jail, I had to assign additional staff to work in that area, in that unit, to make sure that we're tracking these people and we're making sure that, not only that they're compliant, but also the victim in each of these cases are being kept safe.
Thank you so much. That was so helpful. I didn't know that myself. One last quick thing on that, Elaine, and I know we're going to jump off, but there's another victim population I know we are all very aware of, and that's the children in the home. One of the things that we're all concerned about is the children weren't in a place where there were lots of eyes and ears. So a lot of the reports that we used to get from the school system, trust counselors, cafeteria workers, teachers, we now have seen through DCF that the children, and imagine those are just the brave ones that pick up the phone and self-report to DCF that there's something going on in the household. So, I mean, we just all pray that that is not really a very serious situation in our homes for children. I want to close out, Elaine. I don't think there's anyone else. I want to thank our federal partners too, because they do assist us in a lot of these different specialty areas of crime. We want to thank HIDA and the Money Laundering Task Force for their help and assistance and what they do for all of us in these different initiatives. And lastly, thank you all so much. Thank you, Chamber of Commerce's, for the incredible work that you do in keeping your local businesses thriving and communities safe, and being partners with us in law enforcement. And Amateur Marketing Council, thank you once again for always bringing us together. This is very useful to sort of hear what each other's doing. And to all my partners in law enforcement and all the supporters of law enforcement, thank you. God bless you. Stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you all.
Thank you so much on behalf of our chairman and all the chambers that participate. We thank everyone, our amazing state attorney, our absolutely wonderful MC. We thank you, our sponsors, KW Property Management, Fran Reed Law Enforcement, our Zoom administrator, Michael Stern, who's handling a lot of things all at once, always. And right after the meeting, everyone who was on the panel in law enforcement, name is in here, and you will win a 2-day stay at the gorgeous Turnberry Isle Resort. So thank you all. Have a great day.